Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And we are exploring a Scottish coastline again. Um, Facing towards Isle of Skye and those directions, that's a part of the coast in Scotland. And we've got some stunning colours, gorgeous blues and turquoise, some lovely light sands, beautiful greys. We've got a square composition. If you don't have a square format, you can extend maybe a bit of sky if you wanted to do portrait way and a bit of sand, more stones that way. Or if you wanted to do more of a landscape where you can have different composition, maybe just have some of the rocks trimmed there, maybe just define different silhouettes to suit it. But I think square works really well for this photograph. I think that's how I ended up cropping my photo. We have loads of horizontal developments. So we've got that rhythm horizontally today. So quite static. So there is a little bit of dynamics there, but there's a lot of that simplified uh, division. Um, we're going to try to interpret our tones today and link them to colors. So if we were to look at our picture, what will be the most light tones? So I'm squinting my eyes and I can see the sand, probably most light. There will be some highlights on the sky as well. Probably the sky will be next. It's quite close, but maybe tiny bit darker. The sky, because we're probably looking at some of the mountains in there. The most dark areas are probably going to be not as large in scale, but probably some of the shadows in here, maybe some of the slightly darker areas a little bit more here, small amounts, okay? Maybe even a small linear tones at the back, but not huge amount. Usually we have a little bit more of it. But quite a lot of tones today will be the middle part, okay? Middle kind of somewhere here. And it will be lovely to translate it and kind of translate those tones into color and kind of have that connection today as well. So I'd like to start with our drawing as we normally do. And then as we discover little shapes and patterns of our uh, skies, water, rocks, sands, we'll discuss how we going to apply the color connections to it. Right, so I'm using the gray background today. We have loads of cool colors. We've got loads of grays, so it's immediately will support our painting. So if you don't cover all the gray, if the little gaps left, that's great as well. So also will give us a fantastic base, kind of something in between tone, yeah? So we can go into lights and we can go into darks quite quickly, and the painting will look building up much more straightforward, much more quicker. We'll see the whole piece together. Right, on my palette, I've got some white, buff titanium, ochre, rose madder, any pinks will do, or kind of purpley pinks. So violet, deep violet, ultramarine, cerulean, blue gray if you have it, emerald green or anything looking like emerald green, viridian, phthalo green, and Payne's gray. Right, so I'm going to start sketching. Use a bit of ultramarine and some Payne's gray. Okay, so I'm just going to make a darker blue, but I'm going to dilute it so it will start being paler. So the blue-gray, that indigo-like color, again, will support loads of darker shapes we'll be creating. Right, so if I were to divide because we've got loads of linear lines, if I were to divide my picture, so top and bottom, and find maybe a halfway through point, gives me a little bit of a reference. So that line where those group of rocks are is just a tiny bit lower than my halfway through point of my picture. If this is my big painting, so I'm just visually connecting that, so that will be approximately my midway. So it's going to be just a little bit lower. Okay, somewhere approximately there. Okay. Okay, and we can tweak all those things as well as we develop things. Maybe it's not going to be so kind of not going to turn so much. Okay. Now, if I were to subdivide the top part of the painting, so I've got a quarter, that almost gives me a perfect line for my horizon line. So again, approximately, where is that? Okay, and horizon line needs to be done as straight as possible. Sometimes we don't see if it's straight or not till we start painting and start spotting things tipping down. So even if you were to measure it now perfectly, by the time we start applying colors, that line moves. So checking it throughout will be great. And you'll see it better, that horizon line, straight line, if you step further away. So maybe at halfway through the class we'll do that. Right, so next I'm going to have a look what's above the horizon line here. So we've got a group of kind of rocks, we're just probably creating like a little peninsula out towards the open sea. Okay, I've got something a little bit higher. It dips in. Okay, something would start growing. So I'm just looking at in connection to the whole of that segment where it's going to be halfway through, where it's going to hit the side of the piece. I think might need to be a little bit shallower. We don't want them dominating. I think my board is absorbing everything very well today. So I might be going over a few things. Okay. Yeah, my board today, I think I used one of my old whites, and I think it's maybe gone a little bit old or gone a bit chalky, so it's felt a little bit like emulsion. If that happens to you, I should have added a tiny bit of PVA glue to make the surface a bit more smoother. However, if this is a little bit more of a less kind of shiny surface, less smooth surface, more absorbent surface, that's really good if you want to paint with thicker layers, thicker strokes, and almost like paint over things. Yeah, so that's a good surface for that. Well, I thought I might just mention it. Right, at the back, I've got a lovely, lovely, lovely color for mounting that beautiful ultramarine little pointy ridge here. Okay, and then there's some lovely soft disappearing in the distance peaks. It could have been the Collins from Sky, but I've been told they were not. But in my mind, they looked like that kind of feel for it. Okay. So we're taking a little bit of approach. Now, I made my mountains taller. I have done it, but will I regret it or not? I've got quite a lot of sky chopped at the moment. I'm going to bring my other elements across, and then I might consider maybe trimming them, or maybe bringing some of the highlights and the clouds in the lower part. But let's keep it that way for now. Right, now the group of rocks in the middle, we can simplify it in a box shape, but there are a few things I'm not too sure about them. Don't quite like that some of the top parts, some of the flowers, some of the pointy ridges of the rock are touching my horizon. It's almost like skimming the line, or just touching, so it's not quite over, it's not quite below. So it's best to avoid those things when we paint. We can't avoid it in photography, unless you're a professional photographer and you scrutinize your work so well, that's all you do. I usually just take photographs of what's what's exciting, what gives me inspiration, and then amend the shape. So my plan is, if I were to take that volume of the rocks together here, okay, can I deliberately maybe bring everything tiny bit lower? Because there isn't much to work on at the front, okay? With a big shape of quite a sandy surface of a rock, maybe a shallower rock here, a bit of seaweed, then a little bit of something here. So that's become more of a focal point for us. There's not much, there's lots of little, almost like smudgy, almost disappearing details. The focal point is staying somewhere here with the water and looking at our background colors. So I might just move all of it deliberately a little lower. Okay, that will give me an opportunity not to touch that border, oh sorry, that's horizontal line of horizon, that border with the sea, border with the rocks. We have a slight angle to that group of rocks. Okay, so I'm turning it in a box first, and I want then to find a little bit of a character. Maybe later on. We've got, remember how we were doing some of the Fountains Abbey arches? Here we can do something similar. Instead of counting every shape, we can just work at a little bit into rhythm of the rocks. Yeah, okay. And again, I'm not gonna do more. Maybe I need to change things. Maybe it's too short. Maybe I need to widen it. So let's have a look at other shapes. Maybe we'll have something. We've got a little view of the water through this area. Okay, and the rocks will have all sorts of shapes. So if you come up with your own exciting texture on it, or an exciting silhouette, that will be wonderful. Don't have to blindly copy it, and sometimes also allow the moment to develop the work as well. What feels going well, continue with it. Okay, I might just move this sand curve a little here, but the rest will stay. Okay, sorry, it's harder to see which line I want and which one I don't. Very absorbent surface today for me. Right, and then on the right hand side, let's have a look. There's a little group of rocks here. Okay, let's do the same. Can I stretch one out a bit more? Okay, maybe we'll have one bigger than another. Okay. Might start picking up a slightly bigger brush, so maybe I can do some tones shortly to get some of the darks. Okay, something else in here. Sometimes it's easier to see those darks than just a simple silhouette. Okay, and then from the same corner we have, and it's harder to see, is that rock coming out, connecting to that sand, or is it just standing in front of it? Could be both. Okay, but I'm interested in how much space it's going to take. Okay, how bold or round, or how much is protruding from outside the sand. What goes like little folds of rock, maybe even ancient rock formations, how they're all coming out from the ground. Okay. And for that front shape of the rock, I'm mainly going to find an outer line, almost like a rock, a wavy diagonal, something across big kind of waves or big shapes used. And then have a look. Right, I've got a bit of seaweed here, but is that going to be with too similar size? How much we're going to have some of sand and how much we're going to have of gray? Can I move this one a little bit higher? Maybe just a little bit higher here. And seaweed almost kind of creates a little extra darkness, even if we don't want it being part of our rocks. It's kind of, it will read the shape a little bit together, so maybe that will be good then. Right. So what I'm looking next at, I'm going to compare my existing shapes. Those larger shapes of the grays with this section and with that back one. So they have different sizes, different proportions. Some of them come in a little bit more closer. So maybe some of these ones started to come closer here. That's a bit more smaller, but some of these kind of have little references. So that's all good. So I need to double check if this is reasonably big section. Can I make this one just tiny bit so it's not going to be overly the same? So by denting my rock, yeah, maybe just doing a few things there, and then there might be something growing. So like little mosses and there could be little platforms on top. I'm kind of reducing the size, but those kind of almost pointy edges gives me an overall give the height there. Okay. And I think it's going to be all of that on here. That's good. So finally, I need to make a decision about my mountains at the back. I think I might just have to tone them just tiny bit down in size. Tiny bit there. And that will reduce that as well. And will give me just a little extra sky. Okay. Okay, that should be enough. I just need to remember which line is correct. And usually my tones help with it. Now, before I go into my full color, I want to pick up maybe a rough brush or just larger brush. This is a little bit old, it's a splitting brush. Just want to do a little bit of darker tones as quick plan of darkness. Okay, just gonna get my ultramarine and Payne's Gray. You can see how runny it is. To block my rocks here. Okay. I'm using terps because I just want to see an overall tone rather than making my surface too oily. Okay. So let's see some of these big shadows or kind of big blocks of gray of from the rocks. Okay, maybe there will be dark, but maybe not full darkness, or just that little belt again. What's happening here? Okay, we'll have some shadows there. Just want to see that size of the rocks. Okay, that's okay. Just want to see all that as a unity, as grouped together, because I'm looking for little spaces, those positive, negative spaces. Which one is going to be my light? Which one is going to be my dark? And that silhouette, if you don't do it straight away, at least I'm noticing it and say, oh, this is an interesting turn, or this is might be an interesting shadow coming in. Okay, that might be an interesting, if I don't even look at the rocks themselves, I'm looking for the shape of light of the sand, yeah? Okay, there might be another little rock coming in. So I'm starting to play and consider other options. Okay, that's where it shows that rock might be part of that sand. And within that sand, the more I look, the more I see tiny definition of a slightly different color, which I might deliberately make less perfect, but more of an edge. That might be my sand slightly exposed to light and slightly more tiny bit more in the darkness. Right, this rock would be all dark. Maybe not black, but just a little bit more darker. All of it. Okay. And if something is a little extra darker, you want to emphasize it, sorry, you can do that as well, and straight away check it out, have a look. Are you happy with that? Will I have that? Looks a little bit of, oh, it's gonna collapse. It's standing almost like on a accurate little leg, yeah? So it might lose that balance, but by the time I'll add the seaweed, yeah, which again I don't really need to do yet, but that tiny touch up of darkness will give me an idea of that balance. And then the gray itself, I think for the gray there will be loads of sand color, but for now, just to see, I've got two lines for my correct line and a little bit less correct one. So I'm just going to combine them just so I can see the shape better. Okay. Seaweed there. That might be, I can start now seeing a tiny bit of something else coming in. I just turn this one down as well. It's pale, but it will be even lighter after. Okay, that's better. Okay, now I think my board is absorbing quite a lot of oil, sorry, or quite a lot of paint, and it keeps the color slightly darker than I wanted. So don't worry if yours is a little bit paler, or try not to use too much paint, more diluted version. Right, and then tiny bit of that extra darkness for our rocks. So what I'm looking for are all my overall darks, which are probably 6, 7, 8, some of them will dip into 9, but it's almost quite a lot of them. Big group over the different distances. But can we see them as an exciting layout, as an exciting pattern? Yeah. Something larger, and it's actually not just horizontal, yeah, but there is something a little bit giving us an entry point, yeah, kind of gathers, keeps us out, we don't just come out from the picture. Okay, then we've got that more interesting shape. I'm now looking at its size. Maybe this will come a tiny bit higher. Okay, so then there's a balance. Don't have a look at that line, that gap, that silhouette of a gap. Maybe something else will be interesting now. Okay, so I haven't separated much in difference those darknesses. Obviously you can see some of them got tiny more shadows, but if I were to plan my darks, no matter how dark the further coast look might appear, it should stay much paler than our middle ground or foreground. I'm mainly talking about some of the shadows and the sharpness of it. Okay, so that's good. Now, what will stay grey with the rest of the medium tones? Probably our mountains, probably well, the water definitely, yeah. If I'm squinting my eyes, actually some of my well, mountains, and I know I've painted a part of this shoreline quite dark, mainly aiming for some of the shadows and what's below next to the border of the water. But the mountains and the water looking very similar. They're looking quite similar in some cases with our rocks. Okay, so it doesn't mean that I painted my rocks right, or that my darkness of the sea is correct at the moment, but that's something to constantly check and compare. So my plan is I've done my darks overall. I want to paint some of my lights. Now, if I were to use a little bit of buff titanium as a little reference. Now, if I were to paint it straight away, in oils, it might not work because we need to have some extra darks, perhaps applied first, and then add more highlights. Those big areas of highlights might work a little bit later. But what I can do is to give myself a little sample, a little understanding of possibility. I will use some oil now with my paints. Buff titanium. If you don't have buff titanium, you can mix it from white, ochre, and a very small amount of violet. But pre-mixed one is just so easy to apply, and just such a good color to connect with others. Okay, so maybe just have a little hint here, maybe have a little hint somewhere. Okay, maybe some of these lovely exciting areas, or if you made a lot of lines in some areas that have sometimes it's just good to hide them, so you start seeing a little bit more of a calmer shape. Okay, I don't want to paint at all because it's easier to add in oil painting fresh color on a dry surface than just painting over. Yeah, but maybe finding little patterns, or at least again noticing when I'm talking about, well, let's just have a look here, let's just explore a little bit there. It's my way of looking, it's my way of discovering what's in front. Okay, good. So we have little hints of our light, and we said our sand might be one of the lightest ones. At the moment, it's not super light, and it's also might settle in and go even darker. But we've got plenty of time to build into that light. So let's work into our sky. So if we were to look at our grid of tone, our sky will have probably from the range of fresh whites to about 3 or 4. Okay, and when we mix our blues, we might consider sometimes just even good to put some marks next to your gray tones, and have little comparison. Squint your eyes or even photograph or step away. Does it looks dark enough? Does it look light enough? As a range. Most importantly, we'll have that range. I'm just gonna give my brush a little clean. Now, I'm gonna carry on with my rough brush because I want to have some scruffy strokes for my sky applied. And we also try not to paint direct whites and direct darks first. If we want to paint something light, we go somewhere here, and then going lighter. If we want to paint something very dark, we paint something here, and then going that way, okay? Right, so let's have some fresh white. This time I'm gonna go for my oil, for my liquids. I can leave now terps aside, mainly for washing my brushes. Okay, so fresh white. And I'm going to start with slightly darker tones. Let's go and maybe find some of those mountains. Maybe not the most dark ultramarine one, but maybe the one in between. So that we're looking for about darkness between 3 and 4, maybe 4 here. I'm going to go for cerulean blue, just cerulean. Okay, and a small amount of ultramarine. Okay, that's quite a lot of ultramarine. Okay, let's just put a tiny bit more white, and I'm mixing that color elsewhere. I'm not mixing it with all of that volume of blue. So it's becoming paler straight away. You can always take a tiny bit more. Okay, so I might kind of gently introduce it rather than go straight into big chunk of thick paint. Okay, I think that's maybe somewhere here. And let's place it So my lower line is the one I want. Okay, so big blocks. I think I might have too watery paint, well, too runny paint. I need to have some thicker body to it, so I need more white. I might use a bit of blue-gray because that's already pre-mixed. The only difficulty is that's got some gray in it, so if you want to... Oops, that's a violet. Sorry. A little bit of violet wouldn't be a problem. Have I gone the wrong one again? No, it's all right. That's okay. Sorry. That's okay. But yeah, we can go with tiny bit more violet or tiny bit more towards cerulean. Okay, let me just put this one close to my other stronger ultramarine-like mountain. Okay, I think that will be okay here. And I will start varying my blue from cerulean, a little bit of ultramarine, cerulean, much more ultramarine, less cerulean in it, tiny bit more white, tiny bit more without white. Yeah, how will that look? Okay, and I might, for example, make this area slightly darker, slightly lighter as it's getting close to a very dark point of the dark ultramarine, so it will appear bold as well. Okay. So let's have more, and also I'll have less ultramarine in the background of this mountain, more of a cerulean blue, maybe even more of the bluey gray, so the color changes as well and will not clash with our ultramarine. Okay, I'm going for some reason again more liquid. I think it's my fluffy brush I wanted to use it for sky, and I ended up painting more of the mountains. Okay. Can paint over some of the darker cliffs. If you want them higher, we can always get them painted over. But what I'm trying to do deliberately is trying to vary my surface. Maybe it's too big dip at the moment, but I can paint over it. But it's not a straight line. This is a bit boring straight line. Can I just do something with it a little bit more? It might be changing slightly the color. It might be something else. And we said we don't want the mountain just bordering our darker peak as well, so maybe something there. Now it feels like I could do with my ultramarine mountain being in place, at least as a big block. So I'm gonna go for more direct ultramarine and just block it in and come back to it after. Just want to see how it will start sitting in that surrounding. Okay, it's a little extra shining. Okay, that's a bit better. Right. Next, let's start adding a bit extra white. Blue-gray. If you don't have blue-gray, you can mix it from white. Ultramarine, a small amount of Payne's gray. You'll get an approximate combination. It's quite a lot of white in it. Again, so it's using it as a base color and then adding the blues you want is quite good. Right, I want this lighter color. I'm not liking my initial line, which I dropped. So I want to create a more, or basically hide it and create a new silhouette which doesn't intervene with my new shapes. Okay, I don't think I like this pyramid-like point here, so maybe that will change that shape. That's what it's for. I want just to see those shapes appearing exciting or not. And I'm just gonna hide this one as well. Okay, again, one point against another, maybe not so good, so maybe that will be a flat edge. Okay, so a little bit more of establishing shapes. Okay, good. Next, I'm gonna go for, again, more blue-gray. I'm gonna go for some of the shadows on my sky. Blue-gray is a base, but let's get a tiny bit of Payne's gray. Okay, a tiny bit of violet. Okay, whatever blue we have on our brush. Maybe it's very, very small amount of ultramarine. So it's kind of staying gently purpley, grayish blue, but it's still got more of a color than gray. Okay. So now I'm going to use my brush and really explore some of the marks. Right, let me see if I can adjust the angle as it's reflecting quite a lot at the top. Right, so I'm using my violet gray, blue gray. Okay, this is quite interesting strokes. I want to place them maybe a tiny bit more darker version for higher level. Tiny bit more. The gray and violet will make it different to the other strokes. Okay, somewhere here, not quite the top, but somewhere in between. And look what I'm doing with the brush, is dragging it, smudging it, just having a little play. I'm not painting quite the cloud. I'm almost like, need to clean my brush, yeah? How would I drag it over? This is gonna go over the mountain. How much chunks of paint it might leave aside. Just giving it slightly different playful directions might be good. Can't see much difference in darkness yet. Small differences started to happen between the mountains, but a little bit less there. So now I can start adding my more light. Okay, some extra paint back here. Keep wiping your brush. Okay, before I pick up slightly smaller brush, I'm going to still work with my rougher brush, larger brush. I'm going to go now for fresh white. As fresh as I can get it. My brush is not overly clean. I wiped it, but it's not overly clean. So picking up some white will be fine. It will start getting mixed with other colors. I can see some lovely lights here. So can I go directly there and almost integrate few strokes? And again, press and lift and drag sideways and almost smudge it. Okay. Run out of paint. Let's pick up a little bit more. It's not as much, not as much, a lot of light that side, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it yourself or can't invent a little bit more if it feels that we can work with it. Okay, I don't want too similar streak here, so maybe just a little variety here. And again, maybe a tiny bit more of that smudged color coming across. So now our grays, gray violets will start showing a bit more. Sometimes less is more. Okay, tiny bit more fresh white, maybe a bit of blue-gray. Okay, well that's quite a light tone from blue-gray as well. I need a little light, but maybe not so much light, so. And I'm going to start thinking a little more about my silhouettes. Now, if you can have a quick look here, I've got almost an outline of a mountain, yeah? Same width stroke going across. If we end up with something like that, that's not so good. But to start with it and then interact it, blend it, connect it to other shapes, that's how we start. That's the easiest way to kind of to apply it. Might just move, clean my brush, wipe it a bit tiny bit more oil, and then I can, using more fresher oil, kind of smudge, introduce it together. I also don't want to have a perfect border of that mountain peak. Can it be a little bit more smudged, a little bit more lost, a little bit more found, somewhere a little bit more sharp, a bit more softer? That'd be fantastic. Okay. Starting to look a little better. But let's find a tiny bit more definition here. Now we can make our cloud a little bit darker. That's one. And we can improve the light for our sky as well. Right, so I'm going to have a tiny bit more darker tone somewhere here. And again, repeating some of those wacky, playful strokes. Clouds could be often little repetitive groups of moist air, so don't be scared of turning into those little groups. Okay, that's, I've lost a little bit more of that darkness here. That's a bit more gentler here. That's better. And here we can work a little more with light. And just continue playing. All right, let me put my big brush aside. And let me pick up a smaller one, so I can handle the paint a little more precise. Now, what I've done, I've just put some blue grain on my brush without putting it into oil. That will give me quite a lot of control, and I can define some of the borders without them being overly smudged. Okay, I've done again the same thing. I've done almost a line. Okay, and now I can start changing it more into the shape, blend it with other colors, connect it elsewhere. Okay, that's shape, that's line has gone now. I'm a little bit struggling to see as the surface is reflective on my actual painting. Peeping on the screen gives me an idea of what's happening. Right, so a little bit of layer of light somewhere here. Maybe this shape of a cloud, just blue-gray. There's something in between. Again, that blue-gray gives us an opportunity not to over lighten the surface. Okay, but also connect it. Okay, I'm happy with the clouds. Maybe a little bit similar waves. Okay, so let's spot and make a little variety. If you end up with rain, clouds, or rain coming somewhere through, that's my little interpretation here. Okay. Something tiny bit more lighter still here. Kind of chaotic marks within strokes, but at the same time there is coherence in it. There is a bit of rhythm, a little bit of that balance, little play. Okay. I'm going to do my mountains next and then come back to borders. Okay, that's too light, that's too light. Because this dark blue mountain doesn't look right, and I've lost a little bit of silhouettes of others. Right, so we're back to my mountain paler ones. The cerulean, a little bit of white, small amount of ultramarine, or you might have already some paler pre-mixed color on the palette. Right, so let me draw back. The color. I'm going darker because I put the color I wanted, the darkness I wanted on a paler sky, and it just all disappeared into white. So going deliberately with darker color, you will end up with a tone or two lighter if you're painting over a light surface. Okay, so other one, parallel lines. Okay, can you see I've got more of a parallel lines, like a repetitive shape. One shape repeats the other. So let's turn this one into a long one. Okay, and I wanted a little, oops, that's too dark now because that surface is dryish or less strong with volume of white. Seeing is more important sometimes than even painting it, because if you can see things, you can continue working on it. Right. And I think I'm going to drop this peak down and give it a little more of a curve. Again, everybody's work can develop differently now already. Some of you might have painted shapes larger or smaller, so we'll have to respond to individual pieces. Now I wanted to have more lighter tone here, so I'm taking some paint off the surface, and let's put fresher paler blue. If the paint is too thick and you're trying to apply a color over, best thing to do is to take the layer off, scrape it all the way till the base, and give it another layer. So I'm more establishing light, and I can come back to more of my silhouettes. So working a little bit of light, a little bit of color, a little bit of silhouette. Okay, let's tune things together. Okay. Is that getting there? I'm coming up with my own silhouette for that blue to ultramarine mountain, and I keep moving that shape about and making those little adjustments. Okay, that's too much white, but it just cuts it through. Almost cleans that surface if I've had too dark color earlier. Okay, that's more interesting. I just need to drop this darkness a little lower for my sky. Now I can see where my mountain is. My dark blue one, I can see now where I can drop my paler blue mountain. Okay, maybe I just need a little paler violet in there. A little bit of violet and paint gray, but staying lighter. I'm not going to add any blue to it now because there's plenty on that surface. So that's will gain. I think I'm reducing the size of the mountain and it's getting lower and lower as I'm mixing the right darkness in there. So you sacrifice one against another and then you balance it back. Okay, a bit more disappearing edge. Okay, that's better. Any fresher whites? So we've been spending quite a bit of time on the sky, but it will be loads of blends in it and loads of nuances for some larger rocks. We might just go big blocks of color. So don't be scared of taking your time for the sky, painting the sky. Right, my slightly fresher white I might put again. Across. Okay, that light just comes through. Can that light comes through anywhere else? Maybe a little peep, a little break. Maybe a little next to the border. Tiny bit more. Not too much again because that we don't want that continuous white everywhere. Can I break it down a little more? Well, I don't want also to have, which I just painted over, a dark silhouette surrounded by lighter tones. Yeah, dark silhouette surrounded by lighter tones. Can I have a little something in between them? Can I have a little bit of something smudged or connected a little bit somewhere? Maybe that tiny bit of extra light or connection. And that makes less perfect openings of dark. Okay, can I take some of it off? Gonna introduce my slightly darker grayish violet again back. Okay, too light. Right, my absorbent surface is a little causing me a little problem here. It doesn't smudge as it normally does, but I'm persevering. Part of that process, not giving up, looking out for opportunities, looking out for varieties. Right, I think I've got quite a lot of paint there and not much progress. So I'm going to take my palette knife, going to take quite a big chunk of paint in there. It's already looking quite calmer. Okay. That's already looking calmer. Paint I scraped could be reused if you wanted. I'm going to go back to my shadows a little more. Okay, that's too light for those shadows. Where's my lovely rough brush? I enjoyed that more. A bit more oil there as well, right? That's quite dark. Okay. A little bit more life immediately. More oil for me. I think I was just struggling with the extra dry surface. And then I can work with some more paler colors. I'm happy with my mountains. Okay. Introducing back my paler colors and maybe some paler blues. Some of those contrasts are quite exciting now. Picking up a bit more softer, a little bit more runnier white. And it's again, it's a little bit off white. Just want to have more of a stroke and a smudge than too precise application. It makes my surface more moist as well. And that struggle on the drier surface is going. And I'll have under the clouds, I will have more light above the clouds, but under the clouds I just want to have a little touch, quite like this one. Maybe we'll have a little more opening. It doesn't work with my grays though then. I enjoyed playing with the strokes effects of the rain, but I think I've lost them now. Okay, that's nice and soft. Okay, this gray stroke now. And I just use some lovely oil. Don't like something, keep on going. Make it playful and try not to say, Oh, this is going to be horrible. Now I've struggled now 3 times. I've done it now. I've lost count how many times I've done it now. I'm going to still do another one and have a little play. That's better. We're getting there now. Maybe a bit too dark than my actual need for it, but I think it's making my sky extra exciting. So maybe I'll have to balance that light elsewhere. That's it, that's it, that's it. Fall in love with your painting, and it will give you strength. It will give you ideas subconsciously what to do with it. Lovely, right. Done. Let's stop there for my sky. Direction is good. Direction is good. Okay. Yeah, it just doesn't smudge. If I want to drag a color, it just doesn't smudge as I want. That's what's happening now on a dry surface. Okay, a bit of light or rain. Right, good. Stopping in the sky. Right, next I'd like to paint my water and focus on that lovely turquoise. So I'm going to start with some white, emerald green, and cerulean blue. Okay, a bit more blue than green. Green will be fantastic, but maybe a little bit less. And earlier on we were talking about the darkness of the water need to be probably about 6, 7 in darkness. So not too much white. White needs to be there, but maybe not too much. And let's build up the depths by putting extra pigment from blue and emerald green. Okay, I'm going to place it on my board and see what it looks like. Okay, too green and too dark. I'm not seeing that transparent, lovely light. So small amount of white. That's better. That's already better. But still slightly pale, I think. Okay, and maybe a tiny bit more towards the blue. Okay, that's lovely. And we'll have a little extra turquoise in some areas. Have a look. I've got some paler patches. We've got darker, more ultramarine-like patches. That's probably where the darker rocks are. Again, paler patches, and they're close to them. Rocks in the distance, a tiny bit of darkness there. Maybe the more deeper rocks showing through. Right, I think that's might be too green. Might need to have more blue. So I need to wipe my brush because it doesn't take any more blue. It's keep overwhelming my color with green. So fresh blue on the side, a little bit of extra white. Okay, become a tiny bit more pale as well. Okay, that's getting more exciting in color. And also its darkness. And I just want to block things. Can find a little bit of silhouettes, but still doesn't have to be perfect, but it does help us working around darker shapes and defining them. You can try to keep our strokes more horizontal, so then even if they reflect later on the light, even don't have sudden verticals going. Okay, now it's flat surface. I haven't got that much depth yet there. Just want to block everything else and then tweak it. So I'm ranging my color gently, a bit more towards the green, a little bit more towards the blue. If the paint is not mixing too well and keeps or stronger pigment or stronger white in the center of the bristles, you might get some patches. I'm going to go for extra pale, maybe somewhere a little close to us for the water. Maybe a tiny bit more towards the green there. Okay. So whichever direction strokes you use around the borders, and then we use horizontal ones just to check it's all in place and it all gives us waves, even if calm ones. Okay, and I'm going to put that paler color as well. Down here. Okay, that paler surface is now starting to be more interesting. Gives us enough tone. Okay, maybe tiny bit more paler. Also hoping it's going to dry lighter. It does look slightly darker on the darker side. Right, a bit more ultramarine. Okay, that's quite a lot. Let's mix it so it will be a little bit less. And introducing it, maybe that will make our paler turquoise appearing lighter. Introducing it closer to the shoreline. Okay, and I'm going to do it differently, a bit more concentrated, darker ultramarine one side, it might disappear or go lower elsewhere. Okay, that's too stripy. So narrowing the line and bringing the light across. No, I don't like that at all. Let's get rid of it. Right, so my surface, I'm struggling a little today, is extra dry. So what I've done, I just put a bit of extra fresh oil, my 3 oil mixtures for all of my rocks and all of my sand area. It just feels just tiny bit better, but it's almost dry again. So that's how not so good my surface is today. So if you ever hit this problem, or stop and cover it with a diluted PVA, or just put extra oil for it to soak in. I might just do those distant mountains as well. So that could be a solution to an issue. Right, so for my rocks, I'm going to go even for a bigger brush, a size bigger. I'll need a little more oil in my pot because it's a bigger brush. It will take more. I need some extra fresh white paint. And we're going to look for highlights and mid-tones for our rocks. Some of them will have a little coolness, and some of it will have a little extra warmth. So we can use, for example, our blue-gray for the starting point. So I'm putting a bit of oil on my brush. Let's get some blue-gray. So I'm looking at maybe a rock here, some of the rocks here, maybe some of the tops, definitely this one. But they are going to be somewhere here now, darkness. Some will be small amounts of highlights, will be extra light, but it will be small. So blue-gray first. And let's go for maybe a hint of Payne's Gray and a hint of ultramarine. Okay, more into the gray side this time. And I'm going to go with big strokes. Okay, does it stand out against the water? Yeah, a little bit. We can do some more highlights after. Okay, that surface feels a little bit better now. It's soaked in some of the oil. Okay. Big brush, larger, exciting strokes. Okay, maybe some longer ones. Maybe some of the shorter ones, almost those segments separating them. Okay, can I have the tiny bit of a hint of violet present? Still working for some of those paler grays. Okay, little findings of ridges, little areas of light, or how some of the angles turn. Okay, there might be something extra lighter here, but bold and light afterwards. Maybe some highlight. Then we have tiny bit of ochre with our blue-gray here. So it will become very light. So if I add more, sorry, I meant buff titanium, sorry. But I can still add more ochre for darkness and a little extra ultramarine and tiny bit of violet, so it's not going to look green. Tiny bit more buff titanium to balance it, so I've got kind of a warmer gray. Okay, extra white. Okay, so I'm just looking for all of those areas in one go. Smaller strokes, wider strokes, building up that surface. Okay. And I want to put a little more of that, not too yellowish. If the color becomes too yellowish, we can use our rose madder to turn it slightly off the yellow, more towards the orangey browns. I've seen some lovely pinks in there as well. and some central areas of that group. So let's maybe put a little bit of that across as well. Okay. And I think this color could go partially at the back. This is a nicer highlight across. And slightly darker version of it, rose madder and violet. Tiny bit darker again. Bit of violet, rose madder, a bit of ochre. Maybe even tiny bit of Payne's gray. I just want to have small amount of extra darkness. It's not quite doing it. Persevere with my violet. That's it, that's better. Again, trying to do slight varieties of color within that distant shape. It will influence the colors around it. That's quite nice. It's blending well. It's not having a super dark border. This is quite a dark, bold border. Can I put a tiny bit of a light on top? Okay, that's not quite light. Okay, well, a little smudge. Okay, not the best shape of the smudge, so let's clean the brush. Okay, and let's keep on going. Quite nice leaving some of the darker silhouettes as well. Maybe not always dark. Remember we were saying we don't want the distant mountains to be super dark. So try to remember to tone them down. If the color becomes too orange, see if we can add a small amount of blue, like ultramarine, because the less reddish colors will be at the back. They will have more coolness. Doesn't mean that they can't be, but they're just less strong. So violets are good, purples are good, but maybe not bright, bold reds or strong, bold oranges. And look what's happening. My mountains start looking a bit more three-dimensional. It's actually starting to look more like a lake, like it's going away from us gently. Maybe we've got a loch. I wanted to add a little more darker line at the base of those darker rocks. So I'm going to use a bit of Payne's grey, a bit of violet again, just more concentrated, a bit more rose madder. I painted that darker line more or less in places, so let's just bring some of it back. Yeah, my painting is almost dry. That's how strong my surface is today. I think it will be quite nice experiment with it. I actually wanted to paint today more. Okay, good. The dark line is moving about. Yeah, it gets more concentrated, it's disappearing. It smudges, it's reappearing. Just hoping that this one is gonna work now well as well. Right, rocks at the front. I'm gonna go back to blue-gray, and I'm gonna go back to ultramarine, and a little bit of blue-gray. Sorry, Payne's gray. Blue-gray, Payne's gray, ultramarine. Okay, and let's work into this one. Tiny, tiny, tiny bit of violet, maybe for part of it. That's it. Good painting it on the darker surface. You can find those highlights. Well, a little more lighter areas, even if not perfect highlights. Defining the silhouettes easy. And this area will have partially blue, but there's a lot of sand in it as well, so I'm going to have a bit of both titanium and blue-gray here. Okay, and I'm gonna get my a little paler color for while I'm in the blues somewhere here, midway. A little bit midway paler colors here. I think if it is a dry surface you're working on, it absorbs a lot of paint. Another tip, I'm slowly to kind of giving myself is to gently wait for it to dry, to almost settle, and then the second layer goes a little easier. It feels like that. It's all wet or all just drier. Okay, so this is getting on nice. Right. Some of the highlights are done. Most of the highlights are done. Let's look at light sand, and then we'll do some shadows and bolder little highlights. Right, sand. It's our lighter stone, so we're going to go for some buff titanium, which we already applied. I'm going to test it here again. It's a bit brighter. And we're going to add some extra white to it. I want it to get really bold and exciting. Okay, the most light tone's probably going to be touching the rock somewhere here. Okay, I'm gonna find those big shapes. It's a little bit of, remember we found that little line of subtone, a bit more pale again at the base of that, almost cup-like, vessel-like. Okay, I'm not paying attention to my silhouette of my rock, so let's look back at that. Okay, can we have tiny, tiny, tiny bit of pink in there? in our sand. Maybe a little bit of a shadow here, might have slightly more of a pink, maybe a hint of violet. Okay, that subtone is yeah, it gives me that space. I might put more lighter tone at the top, maybe not as wide that shadow, but that start to have more of a three-dimensional feel for the space. And this area will have some seaweed, and some of this sand is gonna go over this rock. So I'm going to start almost painting, placing, finding little cracks, crags, little areas where the sand set a little bit more. Sometimes painting on a dry surface to add color, that variation between blue and ochre is easier. Sometimes, so if you paint one color and leave gaps, it's slightly fresher appearance stays. But another way of working is going bolder with a thicker stroke, but leaving the surface to remain kind of to sit the surface to stay at the top with a fresher lighter color, well, lighter color, dark color, whichever color is going to be last, but stays untouchable, almost like the top layer. Okay, I'm just done those strokes, and I can go slightly thicker with my brush, just to make sure it's got a kind of flat surfaces, but in some areas maybe they will have a little bit more sand, and some of them a bit more thinner layers. And again, just have a little play. Prefer them to be flatter than and too patchy in darkness. So have a little play and see where it takes you. Maybe stick to one or two directions. I think that might be enough before I start overworking it. And let's come back to the sand. I quite like now the rock at the front. Little highlights of maybe where the sides are turning. Right, and some more fresher white here. And some more fresher white with my buff titanium. And let's just do it a tiny bit more of extra thickness. A couple of strategic places of that boldness. Okay, that's could come nicely here. Maybe a little more white somewhere in the middle. Not too big curvature, that deeper end. Keep it reasonably flat. Now, if you were to paint most of the sand of a similar darkness, you will have a lovely bold block. With the nuances of subtone, you have some extra depth. So it's a balance. How much are we using flat color and how it influences us? Okay, we have some extra sand This is more impasto feel of very much dry. Yeah, that might work here. If I'll use this color, which has got a bit of sand settled on tops, as well as some of these rocks. Also might catch some of my highlights. Yeah, some of my strokes come out as dry brushing. You see quite a lot of those type of strokes, almost dry brushing, and impressionists. I wonder if they had quite a lot of dry surfaces, how they were priming their canvases, say Monet and Degas. What materials were available to them. This is dry brushing, as you never can get that in oil painting, or not very often. If you don't get dry brushing, that's totally fine. Don't you worry about it. Maybe just a little directional highlights. The light started to be wonderful here. I'm exaggerating the volume of it, but I think I'm gonna have to go with the flow. That's how every painting is different. Even if you aim for something, things happen in materials or environment, and the painting dictates what it's going to be. Okay, I might just put a tiny bit of that texture somewhere here. Okay, a little more white. And I think I'm almost ready for my nuances of them, of the shadows and the seaweed. Might put tiny bit of light. We've got bold light now at the front. I need to put tiny bit of light at the back as well. There might be just a touch of light through. Right, I wanted to top my white. I think the painting is finally turning around. I'll put a little hint of that light. That's too much. And the same color doesn't work in the distance. Maybe I need to go back to my pinky pink and ochre. No, that orange there wouldn't work. We haven't talked about it. Yeah, that area was so much more exciting when it was damp. Now it's all went matte. But it's given me more feel of the mountains being further away. I think I'm ending up having a lake rather than a sea. It looks like a mountain terrain now. Looks like I'm on top of some plateau. That light traveled. Might just do a bit of dry brushing if that's what my technique dictates today. Love little challenges in work. Sometimes you have interesting discoveries. Same as when you're moving from one media to another, go from watercolors to acrylics or to oils. Sometimes it's tricky because you just got used to one feel of paint consistency, of color mixing, and sometimes it just brings something totally unusual, what you might have not done otherwise. So from any of your paintings, try to learn and bring something from. Quite like that light in a distance mountain now. Distance rocks. Right. So my darker tones, little tweaks. I think I'm going to stay with the same brush, but make more solid darks. I'm going to go for my Payne's Gray, Rose Madder, or any of your pinks. Okay. Add some lovely cooler shadows. Let's see if we can have a little bit more warmer shadows. Okay, more red so it doesn't get over absorbed in black. And I will have a tiny hint of buff titanium or anything kind of paler color from the palette. Let's check that one out. Squeezing my brush so thick paint is coming out from the root of it. Can wipe it in a tissue so then the thick paint is staying on the tip of the brush, not the base. I don't want thick layer, kind of thick marks there. So let's find some exciting silhouettes here. Let's bring some of those shadows back and define some little ridges. Okay, if I want a tiny bit lighter, I can have that buff titanium, maybe too much. Okay, little variations there. Right, I don't want that line there, that's okay. Right, gonna go back to my darker tone. Maybe we'll find the in between ones after. A little extra pinks and then touch up the cools, and we are almost there. These are nice little improvised strokes. There isn't much of a pink in that rock, but I've tried the color and it's given me more three-dimensional feel for this corner. Sorry, I picked up a bit of emerald green by accident, so I was just trying to get rid of it. Seaweed will come here beautifully, so I might just have little beginnings of it as well. Right, I need more red and more Payne's Gray. So my seaweed could start. Okay, a little, again, partially dry brushing. Yeah, just dry brushing for this will be fantastic. If your painting is very wet, very, very gentle drags. If you tried and it's not happening, it's just too thick everywhere, and the paint just soaks in. Let it dry for a day or two, and you can do a little bit of dry brushing after. Look what my brush is doing now. It just drags and creates the dry markings. Okay, I'm going to have little clusters of darkness. You can go for hints of violet with Road Mazza and Payne's Grey. Okay, maybe a little variety of those cluster shapes as well. I want to bring maybe a little bit of something of a zigzag line. Of tracks, how it might have been left by the retrieving water. Looks a little too perfect. Maybe little ones as well somewhere here. That's it, that's better. That's better. It kind of gives it a bit more of a connection. Right, and my slightly cooler shadows for final touches. Just a bit of blue and Payne's Grey. Okay, maybe some stronger shadows somewhere here. Okay, maybe little divisions finally. Almost chopping some of that rock off the base. Anything, little nuances at the top. Maybe if my lines don't work, maybe I can do little dabs and drags, and to make narrow lines from the wider ones, we can mix things, what's in between them, and that widens that surface and creates the cracks a bit more. I wanted to keep this rock slightly light. It's very dark on the photo, but I think it will be quite good. Tiny bit of a shadow maybe. I think it does look quite good together without too much darkness. Now, if you want to put a little bit of flowers or mosses on the top, you can. If it feels too much, you can leave it out. I think perhaps a stroke or two will satisfy. might just link that warmth of the um, shoreline at the back here. I just put some stronger ochre with rose madder as and a little highlight on them as well, so they don't look too flat. Okay, something there. But that's perhaps a tiny bit too wide. Right. I think I'm going to stop at that for today. Some bolder strokes come at the front and the last stages. I think my seaweed's gone slightly bigger than I wanted, and I think it's blended a bit too much with my darker color of my sand, which worked well without extra texture, that sand. But now I'm looking back, maybe a bit gone too dark. I'm gonna let that surface of the painting dry. I'm gonna see how it's behave dry in the sense of not just the surface one, some thicker strokes will need to dry as well, and maybe touch up a couple of more highlights here and there. And if I'll have a chance, I would probably try to do similar painting on my normal prime surface and see how it also behaves. Similar colors will translate in my normal background primer, with my background primer. Looking at some of these ones a bit soft. Right, gonna stop here, stop messing about. Thank you so much for painting with me this evening. I hope you enjoyed your experiments and playful color mixing, and I look forward to seeing your paintings. Thank you.